Well, that's parallel. Parallel never intersects, right? So they're going on forever and ever. They're never going to touch. If you make a guess, what do you think perpendicular lines do? They do intersect. Yes, they do intersect. And do you remember what kind of angles they make when they do intersect? Lorenzo, you just said it. What did you say? 90-degree angles. Yeah, they make right angles. So they intersect at 90-degree angles. Does anybody remember the symbol for perpendicular? Yeah, upside down T. It's got the little box on it. Usually depends on, just kind of depends on how the person decides to write it. I usually just write an upside down T, but sometimes you might see even to like the little 90-degree angles that's in that upside down T. Okay. Do you remember anything about the slopes? I'll give you a hint. It's not the same. They don't have the same slope. Thank you. Maybe you remember the words opposite, reciprocal. Does that ring a bell? Opposite reciprocal slopes, maybe? Maybe you could just lie and say yes, make me feel better. Opposite reciprocal slopes. So opposite reciprocal slopes mean you take the fraction and you flip it, right? A reciprocal means if it's like 1/2, it then flips and becomes 2/1, right? They switch places. Opposite means they change signs. So if you have a positive, it would become a negative. If you have a negative, it will become a positive. So for example, if I gave you the slope 3/4, what would its opposite reciprocal be? 4/3, and then would it be positive or negative? It'd be negative because this is a positive slope, so its opposite reciprocal would be a negative 4/3. So if you have a positive, it will become a negative. If you have a negative, it becomes a positive. Let's try another one. What if I gave you just 2, positive 2? What would its opposite reciprocal be? Ooh, negative 1/2. Very good, because if there's nothing underneath a number, what can you put it underneath? Put a 1 right underneath it. So if I flip that fraction and change the sign, it becomes negative 1/2, or 1/2. Good. Okay, so parallel has the same slope. Perpendicular has opposite reciprocal. If that's the only thing you got out of it today, then that's good at the very least, because that is super important, and I know for a fact it's all over your midterm. Now, when we write an equation of a line, does anybody remember the general form that we write an equation of a line? I'll give you a hint. It starts with y equals. Good. Y equals mx plus b. Hopefully that at least rings a bell. What's a part of that that you remember? Do you remember what the m or the b stands for? Not bisect, but it's an intersection point. It's where it intersects the y-axis, so it's called the y-intercept. So if you looked at a graph, it would be where your graph crosses the y-axis. Do you guys remember what the m stands for? It's the slope. It's not the x-intercept, it's the slope, which is why this is why it's so important over here for parallel perpendicular. The m is my slope. Does anybody remember what slope actually is? What does slope mean? If I say the slope of this floor is 0, what does that mean? Good. It doesn't go like uphill, it doesn't go downhill, it's just a flat surface. If I'm going up a hill, you have a positive slope. Going down a hill, you have a negative slope. Okay, so slope is, or maybe you remember it more as rise over run. Maybe that rings a bell. Rise over run. Or in geometry, we really do the change of y over the change of x. Maybe that looks familiar too, because I may or may not have taught you that already. So slope is really important because slope is how we determine if a line is parallel or if a line is perpendicular or if it's neither of the two. So today we're going to practice looking at some equations and determining if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or none of them. So we're going to start here, example 1. We got about, I think we've got 5 examples total. It's not too many. Okay, so my first example is I want to know if AB, line AB, and line CD are parallel, perpendicular, or neither or none of them. So I want to know if the two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So if they're parallel, they have the same slope. If they're perpendicular, they have opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay, so I'm going to give you the coordinates of A, B, C, and D. So coordinate A is -6, 4. Coordinate B is, that doesn't seem right. Oh, -9, that is right, my bad. -9, -2. So that's line AB. And then C and D, I'm going to give myself a little bit of space over here. C is 3, 9, and D is 4, 11. So I've got line AB, I've got line CD, and I want to determine if those two are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So to find the slope, I'm doing the change in y, so how my y values change, over the change of x, how your x values change. So we write it like this. Change of y, change of x. So a triangle means the change. How does it change? Does it get bigger? Does it get smaller? Does it become positive or it becomes negative? Okay, so in these coordinates here, you're given coordinates like on a graph. Which one comes first, the x coordinates or the y coordinates? X coordinates come first, y coordinates come second. So I want to know, how did the y coordinates change? So as I went from A to B, how did my y coordinates change? So in other words, how do you get from 4 to -2? Do you have to add or subtract? Subtract. And how many do you have to subtract? You subtract 6, right? You're getting smaller by 6. So that's a -6. So my change of y is -6. Okay, now I'm going to do my change of x. How do you get from -6 to -9? Are you adding or subtracting? Subtracting, and how many? -3. So your change of x is -3. So your slope is -6 over -3. Can you reduce that to make that smaller? Can you do -6 divided by -3? Yeah, what is -6 divided by -3? Negative what? This means I have 6 cookies, 3 people. How many cookies does each person get? 2 cookies each. What's a negative divided by a negative? Positive. So my slope for this is just 2. +2. There's my slope. Now we're going to do the same thing for C to D. We're going to see, is that slope the same or is it opposite reciprocals? So again, I'm going to do change of y over change of x. This one's easier. So x is my first value, y's are my second value. How do you get from 9 to 11? What do you have to do? Add 2. Change of x, how do you get from 3 to 4? Plus 1. My slope is 2 divided by 1, which is really just what? It's just a 2. So my slope for AB was 2. My slope for CD is also 2. So are these lines parallel, perpendicular, or none? If they're exactly the same slope, which one has the same slope? Parallel. So if the slopes are the same, my lines are parallel. So your answer here is parallel. You can either write parallel, or I'm just going to put the symbol for it, parallel. I'll write it too, just to be nice. Okay, questions there? Do you think you could do one just like it if I give you one more? All right, you try one on your own now. Ready? Number 2. Again, I want to know if A, B, and C, D are parallel, perpendicular, or none. It's the exact same question. All right, I'm not going to write it again, but it's the same question. This one I'm just going to give you new coordinates. So point A, and you can give yourself a little bit of space so that you can put the change, right? Point A is -9, 4. Point B is -13, -1. So there's my first line, AB. Point C is -7, -4. And point D is -2, -8. So I want to know if those are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So I'm going to give you a moment. I'm going to freeze my screen. You're going to give it a try. Let's see if we get the same answer. Just like the last question, I want to know my slope. Okay. Change of y over change of x. Okay, so for the first one, A to B, what did you get for your change of y? Are you adding or subtracting? To get from 4 to -1. You're definitely subtracting. How many are you subtracting? 5. You're going down 5, right? You got to take away the 4. That gets you to 0. Then you get to -1. You got to take away one more. How do you get from -9 to -13? -4. Good. So your slope is what? -5 over -4. Now, you don't want to reduce the 5 over 4, right? You can't get that any smaller, but what can you get rid of? Yeah, the negatives. What's a negative divided by a negative? A positive. So you can just get rid of those negative signs. Your slope is 5 over 4. Okay, let's do the same thing for the other one. Change y over change of x. Okay, how do you get, so here's your x's, here's your y's. How do you get from -4 to -8? -4, subtract 4. How do you get from -7 to -2? Good, +5, right? Because I'm getting less negative. I'm getting closer to the 0. So it's +5. So what is your slope for CD? Whoa, -4 over +5, right? -4 over 5. Okay, so now looking at these two slopes, are they the same? Are they exactly the same? No. So they're not parallel. Are they opposite reciprocals? Do you flip the fraction and change the sign? Yeah, so since you flip the fraction, right, 5 over 4 becomes 4 over 5. This one's positive, this one's negative. Since they are opposite reciprocals, what kind of lines are they? Perpendicular lines. So you can either write the word perpendicular or you can just put the symbol. I'll put perp under it so you remember. All right. Questions on that one? Not too bad, right? Is it starting to come back to you a little bit? Do we kind of remember some of this? A little bit. Some of you are going to be blank stares, which is unhelpful. All right, number 3. Now, instead of me giving you points, this time I'm going to give you 2 equations, and we're going to determine again if the equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Same idea every time. But this one I'm going to give you 2 different equations, and we're going to have to look at the slopes of those 2 different equations. So the first equation is 3x plus y equals 4. And my second equation is 3y equals x minus 6. So I want to know if these 2 are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Yes, Mitchell. Can you what? Can you explain it? Sure. Good. So the first thing we want to do for both of these is we want to get it in this form right here. We want it to look like this. Y equals mx plus b. Because that's the only way we're going to know what the slope is of the equation. So we want to get the y all by itself. And that's what we're going to do for both equations. All right, Mitchell, so he's going to walk me through the first one. So what did you say to do first? Good. Subtract 3x from both sides to get that y by itself. What are you left with, Mitchell? Good. How come you didn't do 4 minus 3x? Good. Yeah, 3x has a variable. 4 doesn't. I can't put those terms together. They're not like terms. One's got an x, one doesn't have an x. And then again, Mitchell, why did you put the 3x first? Yeah, the form is y equals mx plus b. I want it to look like this with my x value first. What is the slope of this first equation? -3. This is your slope. All right, that's all we're looking for is the slope. I don't really care about this part over here. I'm going to do the same thing to this equation. I want to get the y by itself so I can figure out what the slope is. Now, what should I do for this one? Don't I what? I can't hear you. Say it louder. You would exactly do that. Divide by 3. This is 3 times y. To get rid of multiplying by 3, you divide by 3. But when you divide by 3, you have to make sure you do it to every single number. So I'm going to divide the x by 3 and the -6 by 3. Everything needs to get divided by 3. All right, on the left, my 3's cancel. You're left with y equals. Now, what number can I put in front of an x if there's nothing there? A 1. So what should be the fraction before my x? 1/3. Good. 1/3 x. I'm just essentially separating it out so the x isn't on top anymore. And then what is -6 divided by 3? Although this part doesn't even really matter. -2. Okay, what's the slope of this equation? 1/3. Here's your slope. So now, looking at those two slopes, to be parallel, they'd have to be the same. Are they the same? No. Are they opposite reciprocals? Yes, they are. So if they're opposite reciprocals, what kind of lines are these? Good, perpendicular. Is it starting to come back to you a little bit? Maybe. It was only a whole chapter that we did this for, you know, no big deal. Like a full-on 3 weeks, but all good. All right. 2 more problems. I'm going to my next page now. Questions, though, on that one? Comments or concerns? All right. Then the last 2 problems, instead of me just determining if 2 equations are parallel or perpendicular, this time I'm going to ask you to write an equation of a parallel or perpendicular line. And you're going to do that using an equation and a point that it goes through. Okay, so number 4. I want you to write an equation of a line that is parallel. So I'm not going to write the word parallel if you don't mind. Parallel to 8x minus 2y equals 5. So I want you to write an equation that is parallel to 8x minus 2y equals 5. That goes through the point 1, 2. So that means if you were to graph the equation, it would go through the point 1, 2 on a graph. So you're going to write an equation of a line parallel to 8x minus 2y equals 5 that goes through the point 1, 2. All right, so first step is I need to figure out what my slope should be. Now, if my equation is parallel, what does that mean my slope should be? I should have what kind of slope? The same slope as whatever this one is. So I want to have the same slope. Which means I need to figure out what the slope is of this equation first. Now, is this equation written in the correct form like this? No. So the first thing I'm going to do, my step 1, is I'm going to find the slope by rewriting this equation. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to put EQU for equation. And I think it's helpful if I write the steps. So when you go back and look at your notes, you go, oh, that's why I did that. That was step 1. Find the slope. So we're going to rewrite the equation 8x minus 2y equals 5. Just like the last problems we did, I want to get the y all by itself. So what should I do first? Good. Minus the 8x from both sides. I've got negative 2y equals, which one should come first? Negative 8x plus 5. Good. And then what's my final step to get the y by itself? good. Everything, I like that you said that, Jaden, by a -2. Okay, so this cancels over here. I'm left with just y equals. Now be super careful. What is -8 divided by a -2? +4x. And then, frankly, this part over here does not matter. I don't even care about that part over there. I really only wanted the slope. So you can, it is, it's -2.5. 5 divided by -2 gives you -2.5, or you could leave it as 5/2. Again, it doesn't matter because I don't even care about that part. The only thing I care about is the slope. What's the slope of this equation? 4. So my slope should be 4. That's the most important part there. This part doesn't even matter. So frankly, if you were doing this on the test and you didn't even do that part, I wouldn't care. So I don't care about that one. I only care about the slope. All right, that's step 1. Now, step 2 is I need to plug in some values because now I have a slope, right? Now I've got a slope. I've got a point that's given to me. And I want to find an equation that has a new b value. This value over here. I want to figure out that new value. So if you're given a point, 1, 2, which one of those is your x? Which one's your y? 1 is the x, 2 is the y. So my step 2, I'm going to do right next to it. After I found my slope, my step 2 is to plug in to find b. Plug in to find b. So I'm going to start with the original equation of a line, which is y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to plug in my slope, my x, my y value, and I'm going to figure out what my b value is. What number are you going to plug in for y? 2, right here. What number are you going to plug in for m? M is your slope. You're going to plug in 4. Maybe next to slope we write m. What number are you going to plug in for x? 1. And then you're going to put plus b because that's what you're going to solve for. So now I'm going to zoom in here. We're just solving for b like an algebra problem. So the first thing you should do is multiply. What is 4 times 1? So I've got 2 equals 4 plus b. What do I have to do to get the b by itself? -4 from both sides. What is 2 minus 4? Good. So you've got -2 is your b value. Now the final step, because the question asked me to write an equation. So we found the slope. We found my b value. My step 3 is to write the equation with my m and b. So final step is I plug it back into this equation right here, but I plug in my m value and I plug in my b value. So my final equation is y equals, what do I plug in for m? 4 again, 4x, plus what's my b value? So you can either put plus -2 or you can just put -2. And there's your equation. So it was definitely time consuming for sure to do those types of problems. I am like 1,000,000% positive you're going to have problems that look exactly like that one on your midterm. Granted, I didn't write your midterm, obviously, but I just know for a fact they're going to have problems like that. And they're going to have a lot of them. Okay. All right. Do I have questions on that one? We're going to do one more like it. Comments or concerns? We're going to follow the same steps too. We're going to do step 1, step 2, step 3 exactly the same way, except this time instead of writing an equation that is parallel, we're going to write an equation that is perpendicular. Okay, so number 5, last one. We're going to write the equation. I'm just going to put EQU if you don't mind. Write the equation of a line that is perpendicular to 2x minus 3y equals 6 and goes through the point 6, negative 1. So we're going to write the equation of a line that is perpendicular to 2x minus 3y equals 6. That goes through the point 6, negative 1. All right, so your first step is to do what? Get it into slope-intercept form. We need to find the slope of this equation. So my step 1, I'm not going to rewrite the steps, but step 1 is to take that equation and rewrite it in the correct form. 2x minus 3y equals 6. So I want to get the y by itself. What should be the first thing that I do? First step, get that y by itself. What should you do? Good. Subtract 2x from both sides. I get negative 3y equals, and again, I can't put the 6 and the negative 2x together, so I put negative 2x plus 6. Okay, what's my last step to get the y by itself? Divide by negative 3, and make sure you divide everything by negative 3. Okay, so I'm left with y equals, now, I've got negative 2 over negative 3. Keep it as a fraction. Can you reduce negative 2 over negative 3? No. What can you cancel out, though? The negative signs, right? Negative divided by a negative gives you positive. So you're left with 2/3 x. And then what is 6 divided by negative 3? What kind of 2? Negative 2. It's positive divided by negative. All right, so what is your slope for this problem? 2 over 3. Now, it asks you to write the equation of a line perpendicular to this one. So, should you keep the same slope, or do you need to change it? Why do I need to change it? It has to be the opposite reciprocal slope. So when you write your equation, you should do what? So instead of 2/3, what's the number you're going to use? Negative 3 over 2. Good. That is your new slope. That's your m value. All right, so that was step 1. Find the slope. Step 2, we plug in our x, our y, our m to solve for b. So step 2, we're going to solve for b. So I use the equation y equals mx plus b, and I have to plug in my y, my m, and my x. Now, what are you going to plug in for your y value? Negative 1. So you use those points that's given to you. What are you going to plug in? Be very careful for your m. Negative 3 over 2. What are you going to plug in for your x? 6. And then I put plus b because I'm solving for b. All right, now do not let the fraction scare you. There's nothing scary about a fraction. All you have to do for a fraction is multiply on top and then divide by the numbers at the bottom. Super simple. So what is -3 times 6, the numbers on top? -18. And I put that over 2, which just means divide it by 2. What is -18 divided by 2? What kind of 9? Negative or positive? -9. Good. So you get -1 equals -9 plus b. And what's the last step to get b by itself? Last step. B by itself. What do you have to do? Plus 9 on both sides. You get b equals what? What's -1 plus 9? 8. Okay, so you've got your b value. You've got your slope. Your final step, step 3, is to write the equation using both m and b. So your final equation is what? Y equals, whoa, don't you use 2/3. Use the one you used. Yep. -3/2x plus 8. There's your final equation. So that is an equation that is perpendicular to this one right here and goes through the point 6, -1. Whew. All right. Now, tomorrow, you're going to get an activity that is going to review this same information. My assumption is it will probably take you Wednesday and Thursday for the activity. I'm hoping it will be done by Thursday, but you're going to have 2 days to do an activity. Keep these notes because it has literally an example of every type of problem on it. Additionally, if you are going back through and you look at your extra credit assignments, cough, cough, hint, hint, one of the extra credit assignments is about parallel and perpendicular lines. You should be able to do an extra credit assignment at this point. I'm hoping.
I think this came up with your
Oh, thank you. Okay. So you don't have any homework tonight.